Men are the ultimate dog's body target of patriarchy. When a war comes, they will be the ones sent off to it. When a dangerous job is needed, they will be the ones sent to do it. When a disgusting job is needed, they will be the ones sent to do it for a minimal fee compared to however much the fat cat in the top office is earning. They need to wake up and realise that we are all being fucked by the same system, and you would liberate yourselves by liberating us.
Welcome to The Tea with me, Myriam, the show where we dig into the story behind the stories. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode of The Tea. If you want to support the show and help shape future episodes, join our Patreon community. Think of it as the resistance. Plus, if you're in our top tier, you'll get access to ad-free episodes. The link's in our bio. This week, we are deep diving with a one-woman powerhouse whose humour, irreverence, and radical honesty have made her a feminist icon of our generation. Many of you will know her from her T4 days and then her stratospheric Hollywood rise in the acclaimed series The Good Place, before going on to front multiple hit shows in the US and UK. She's also the founder of Move For Your Mind, a movement to champion a healthier relationship to exercise and wellness. And today, as we watch a global rise in authoritarianism, far-right politics, and louder than ever social conservatism, I want to ask what a real feminist fight back looks like. In a world where influencers like Nick Fuentes can tell millions that a lot of women want to be raped, and high-profile conservative voices such as Erica Kirk and Candace Owens promote trad wife roles that keep women at home serving husbands, leading women's rights groups warn that the Trump administration is rapidly rolling back women's rights, gutting protections for women, and fueling a broader global retreat on gender equality and bodily autonomy. In the self-declared land of the free, around 40% of US states now either ban abortion outright or impose such early and extreme limits that they operate as a near-total ban in practice. And at the same time, Meta has removed or restricted dozens of accounts run by abortion access providers, queer groups, and reproductive health organizations, serving tens of thousands of people worldwide, one of the biggest waves of censorship campaigners say they've seen on its platforms. And the UK is not immune. Among 16 to 29-year-olds, roughly half to two-thirds of young women identify as feminists, but that's compared with only about a third of young men. It's a widening gender gap that sits alongside a documented rise in incel culture and online misogynistic extremism that's now showing up in safeguarding data, all while heroin chic makes a disturbing comeback in our beauty culture. So let's get into it. Jameela, thank you for being on the show.
Hi, that was quite an intro. Thank you very much.
Only a few things for us to work out in the next hour or so to put the world to right. First off, let me ask you, you're back on our shores after around a decade in America. Mm-hmm. Blink twice if you are effectively a political refugee.
No, I'm just homesick, desperately homesick, turning 40. Life is getting very real for all of my friends, and I don't want to miss it because I'm on a Hollywood set.
I hear that. Yeah. You felt like life was kind of getting away from you in the Hollywood bubble?
Yeah. And, I really enjoy having the career that I have, but it really doesn't define me in any way. And so life and friendship and community defines me, and time with my dogs. And so I'm making sure that, I feel as though I got to do loads of amazing, impressive things in my 20s and 30s, but success is a different metric for me personally. And I think emotional fulfillment is the most important thing for me. And I don't know if I've experienced a lot of that in the last 15 years, because I think the two are mutually exclusive, a career like this and total peace. And so I'm just chasing a bit more of the peace.
Interesting.
At the moment, yeah.
It's really
whatever
interesting.
The opposite of hustle culture is what I'm pushing.
This is it. And also, I guess the opposite of what we, for so long, a version of feminism told us, like, your career will emancipate you. You go and do you as a woman, chase those dreams, be that woman. And in many ways, you'd represent, like, the validation of that dream, right? The idea of, like, financial success, public profile, recognition, the awards. And you're saying, actually, maybe that doesn't make me fully happy and content.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want to just stay at home and do nothing. I want to be intellectually stimulated. But I think that, the concept of hierarchy and climbing to the top of these lists and winning these awards just feels inherently patriarchal and unnatural for everyone, men and women. And I've met a lot of the most successful people in the world in STEM, in politics, in entertainment, and none of them are happy. And I think after that, you start to collect enough data. I'm not saying that they are as unhappy as someone who has nothing in this world, because that's obviously the argument that the stupidest person on the internet will present to me. But I'm saying that all of that has not created the utopia that you're told it will create. And so I've had the inside track on all of that and realised actually just to have enough, and I'm so privileged to not have children or dependents, so I can do that. I can just have enough, but I just want to have enough, and I feel as though the world is disintegrating right in front of us. I think our travel restrictions are about to increase. I think that soon seeing the world and experiencing lovely things will be restricted just to the super wealthy. I think the wealth gap is, if we think it's bad post-COVID, I think we have no idea what we're in for, especially as hundreds of millions of jobs are dissipating. This is an upbeat Christmas episode. And so in my mind, I feel as though we don't have a lot of time to make the most of what's left of the world that you and I once were lucky enough to know. And so I want to experience that. And I think that to me is what I will thank myself for on my deathbed one day.
Thank you for corroborating my pessimism. I was definitely hoping that you were going to be like, Myriam, you're just looking at life with the cup half full or like half empty, whichever one this is meant to be. Because I have to, say that I share your profound pessimism going into 2026, unless there's some kind of major wake up. I mean, I'm counting obviously on everyone watching the show to be that, but it's looking pretty bleak out there. Speaking of which, so when you returned to the UK after 10 years, have you noticed any differences in the country you've returned to? Anything that you sort of think, it has changed since I left here 10 years ago?
Not really, actually. I left just as Brexit was taking place, and so xenophobia was already on the rise. If anything, I feel as though British people are waking up more and starting to unite more on the fact that all of the politicians are bad and that the infrastructure is fucked. And so I know I can see more division in the media, but I sense more unity as people are starting to wake up to the fact that actually the problem's coming from up top. It's not as much each other. And so I can understand how that might sound like I'm in an echo chamber, but I'm not. I'm actually the opposite. I very much so expose myself to all of the other sides. And I think the growing frustration is that it's becoming harder to blame all of the problems on trans people in sports or migrants or all these different things. I know there's still a lot of pressure on those groups, but I do think that it is starting to become impossible to ignore the evil and corruption from the very top.
Agreed.
And from technocrats and autocrats and the people who are just violently stealing everything from us.
I wanted to ask you about your identity in this country, given the tensions that you were kind of alluding to. And I know you said you yourself don't feel like you're experiencing much of that day to day. But obviously, we know that British Asians are subject to a lot of race hate crimes.
Of course, all I meant is that I was here the day that Brexit was announced and got called a outside Snappy Snap. So I'm just saying that I felt like we were already at boiling point.
Right.
I don't feel as though if I'd left before then, I might feel a marked temperature shift.
Yeah.
But I feel as though it's actually quite embarrassing how the same people are being blamed, the same things are being peddled. The newspapers haven't found a new way to manipulate the people. It's the same exact headlines I was seeing a decade ago, and yet the country's continued to deteriorate. Nothing shifted. So I smell shit.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I guess what I was going to ask you about was day-to-day tensions feel, to me, more palpable. So I don't know if you were here last summer when the so-called riots happened, right? When people were literally being attacked in the street. I remember friends, telling their parents, like, don't leave the house.
Yeah, I didn't leave the house.
So you were one of these people. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that was... We've had other riots in our lifetime. Those felt different. Those felt very economically motivated and very clearly economically motivated. This was the first time for me that I felt that the communities, racialized communities, were being targeted in such overt ways that it was clearly putting people's lives in danger, that your well-being was at risk just by virtue of being a non-white person walking the streets. And so...
Well, it's a tactic, isn't it, right? It's a tactic of the fact that we are moving closer towards some form of a third world war, and the government has recognised that they have bled dry any hope of patriotism in young people today. They underserve their communities. People don't have money to heat their homes. Their grandmothers don't have money to eat. They don't have money to feed their children. They can't get childcare. People are struggling and they're not proud of their country anymore. And so rather than look after the people in your country, the politicians, they've instead chosen to work alongside the media to try to make us hate other people rather than love our country because our country looked after us. They're using hate as a weapon, so they're turning us against each other. And I think it's starting to run a little thin. I think we're starting to recognise that this just doesn't really add up. Not everyone. I think there are certain people who obviously don't. But I'd say the vast majority of this country is awake to the fact that it doesn't make sense that this small group or this small group could be responsible for this much chaos, this much suffering, this much poverty and austerity, this much inequality. Because of social media, we have more access to understanding the AI technocrats and the relationship with America and the United Kingdom and how similar our system is becoming to that. So I wouldn't say the whole of England is awake to it, but I think more of us are than ever before thanks to social media. And I think what's been happening with Israel and Palestine has also shone an extra light on that.
Well, speaking of that, last time I saw you IRL was at the Together for Palestine concert where you and your boyfriend were both speaking. Why was it important for you to be part of that?
I can't imagine not being part of that. I don't imagine a world in which I wouldn't. We have to stand up for what's right. We have to stand up for humanity. It was not supposed to be a day of any kind of hatred or division, and it wasn't. It was such a loving, wonderful atmosphere. I've also worked with Choose Love for a decade, and I love and trust them. And I wanted most of all for people to see stories of Palestine that weren't just the abject horror that people have learned. A lot of people didn't know anything about that culture up until 2 years ago, and all they know is the worst and saddest possible stories, and I don't want that to be their legacy. And what the day was doing was also celebrating the art and the poetry and the humanity and the love and the generational stories of Palestine. And so I really want to be a part of restoring the dignity of Muslim people and Palestinian people whose lives are being reduced to nothing other than the binary of terrorist or victim. You know, there's all these stories, there's all this culture and this food and this colour and this music, and I feel very passionately about the road to love being humanising people again, which the media has done a really good job at dehumanising people. And so anywhere I can be to help re-establish that these are human beings, these are real lives and real stories and real legacies and bloodlines that are being wiped out. And so how could we not care? That shouldn't feel like an act of violence. That's how I feel.
What's your personal connection to Palestine? Do you have one?
I don't think it's any different to how I feel about Sudan or Congo or Ukraine. I think when you see people being the recipients of collective punishment anywhere, it's human to want to stand up and help those people, because as we're hearing from the governments, and now, you know, I mean, across Europe, they're telling us that war is coming to us. It could be you. You can be a refugee of war within weeks of warning. Everyone is unsafe. We are all unstable. And so I think karmically it makes sense for us to look out for one another because we're all sharing the same planet at the same time. And I feel saddened and bemused by how politicized it is just to care about human beings, and the success of the media in making people seem more valid of human care than others. And it really freaks me out. And, I was a teenager and I think therefore less engaged during what was happening at the beginning of Iraq. But since I've learned and understood and realized how extraordinary the campaign was, the stories that all my friends who are from Muslim backgrounds had to, all the films they got to audition for were to play terrorists. There's a lot of very clever, insidious propaganda that's taken place across media, across entertainment. And again, it's because we don't tell the stories of humanity and love and passion and complexity. It's been very well done, and it's very sad.
Very well done. It's an interesting way to put it.
It's been excellently executed. The propaganda is out of control.
And interesting, you mentioned there sort of coming the sort of war machine revving up, which of course we've had several European countries already talk about, the idea that they're going to restart conscription and that sort of stuff. And recently, here in the UK, the Home Office announcing that they are bringing in a sort of amendment that means that up to 51% of British Muslims could end up losing their nationality. This kind of dual nationality thing is now being weaponized as a way of saying, oh, well, watch yourself, because if you overstep on this issue, we can strip you of your nationality. And of course, when that happened years ago, it was, happening to people who'd been indoctrinated by ISIS, so no one cared. It was like, oh, well, they sort of deserve it for what they happened, even if they were sort of kids who'd been trafficked in many cases to these territories. But today, that's like an imminent threat that people are facing in this country. I hear your optimism in terms of people changing their understanding of what's happening. But do you feel hopeful about that becoming reflected at the political level? Because I feel like the political level seems to be chasing the far right, regardless of who's in power.
100%. I think for me, these are the last maybe 2 years of the people having any power. And so I don't have hope of it magically changing at the political level, because politicians are still allowed to be funded by outside groups. And so as long as that happens, they're going to protect corporate power and they're going to protect technocrats. People have power with their money to, I think, even more powerful than protesting is to withhold from capitalism, withhold from consumerism in an organized fashion, and make a fucking point that they will soon have complete control over us. When we come to a point of universal basic income, we have no opportunity left to fight back. But we have a small window left. And so I guess all I ever try to do is remind the people that we are actually the ones still in power. It's slipping through our fingers like sand, but we still have a moment here to make our voices heard. And I don't think that's going to be done as successfully with placards as it is with organised withdrawal of funding. You saw even when Jimmy Kimmel, for fuck's sake, got taken off air within a few days of people boycotting, I think it was Disney or something, he was back on air. And now it's as if none of that ever happened. Money speaks louder than words or actions or anything. And so I do think that we have a minimal but ripe opportunity to take the power back. I mean, all this AI is taking over and people are using it to write basic work emails or ask it what they should eat for lunch. We're letting their kids, we're using it for therapy, although I understand that because therapy is so hard to access in this country. God save the NHS. But people are choosing it for a partner. They're choosing it for love. Men predominantly are choosing AI girlfriends over trying to learn how to speak or please real-life women.
What do you think that tells us about where male-female relationships are at when men would rather a compliant robot, a compliant sex robot, to be fair, versus a human female partner?
Well, men are indoctrinated. They're indoctrinated to believe that they can't ascend beyond where they are. They can't grow. There's nothing more emasculating to me than the manosphere telling young men that the only way for you to be on top or even to maintain equality is to subjugate women, rather than telling a young man, you can be anything you want. If women are coming up alongside you, you can keep your head above water too. You can grow, you can emotionally mature, you can be what women are expecting of you. You can rise to the challenge. Instead, we're telling men, no, you're you're actually too stupid and inept. So you need to just keep these bitches down so that no one will catch up with you. And that's the only way to maintain power. And you should find love via someone having no other economic freedom other than to be with you. You know, we're trying to strip away girls' education. Women's industries are being defunded. We want to take away women's right to vote in certain countries, and certain countries have already been doing that. We want to take away women's bodily autonomy, women's liberty, make it harder for a woman who's being abused in a relationship to be able to leave. All of these things might be happening more so in the Middle East or in the United States of America, but they're bleeding out over to here. And the people who achieved this in America have their eyes set on the United Kingdom next. Like, look at how long women have been subjugated. Look at how much we've been subjugated. And in a matter of 30 or 40 years, we've managed to kind of catch up. With so many hurdles in our way. Like, we're outperforming boys academically. We're buying houses younger than young men. We are a viable threat. After thousands of years, in a matter of decades, we've become a viable threat. And rather than take any inspiration from that, men have just gone, oh God, we're going to have to cut them at their fucking kneecaps.
Yeah, because the competition just got tougher, right?
Yeah, and it's like, imagine having such low self-esteem that you don't feel as though we can enjoy that as a world. Like, I believe, and I think this is going to piss you off, but I'm ready for it because I like you very much.
Bring it.
Okay. I think women were not the target of patriarchy. I think men are the target of patriarchy. I think that patriarchy was designed to subjugate men, to be able to send them off to war. We don't count how many men die at war. To send them to do the most dangerous jobs, to send them down the mines, into diamond mines, go and do all this unnecessary shit that we don't actually need as a planet. All this excess is all created so that wealthy men can send young, healthy men to do the dog's body work for them, often lower, like working class men or people with lower status. And so men are victims of higher violence than women. Men are victims in some countries of more sexual violence because of the rape that happens in prison. Patriarchy is so damaging for men. 60% of the gun deaths in America are men turning the gun on themselves, the male suicide rates. Patriarchy is designed to subjugate men. And what they did, which was so genius, was to tell men, oh no, women are the target. So you subjugate them, and then you won't notice how much we are subjugating you, how much we are stealing from you. And so I think it's so sad that men are so gullible, easy to manipulate, that they haven't realised this. They're the ones who, as all of Europe are calling to increase their armies, the ones who are voluntary are girls to join up. Whereas we're discussing that in the next 5 years, countries like Germany are going to mandate conscription. That's going to be teenage boys, young men, anyone under the age of 60 maybe, who has to stay and fight. Men are the ultimate dog's body target of patriarchy. And women are profoundly impacted. And in many ways now more so impacted, but only because men don't realise that they're the fucking target. And rather than fight with us against patriarchy together, which would save their lives at higher numbers, the ego trip of being able to just feel like someone's lower than me is enough for them to be sated. And yet they're still dying and killing themselves in ridiculous numbers. You see this even with the working class in this country or in America or many countries. You go, but at least you're not migrants. Look at someone who's got less than you and brutalize them.
So how would you define patriarchy then? Because I suppose when I'm hearing you, I hear something that I talk about a lot with my friends where I've got a lot of working class male friends who would say to me, when you talk about the patriarchy, I don't hear it serving me. Right? These are working class men who are struggling.
They're the number one target of the patriarchy.
So they're like, what you're talking about benefits like 1% of men. And I say, well, it might benefit them the most, but what benefits them also then trickles down to you in many ways. Not you, obviously, I mean them. By which I mean, right, the idea, for example, that they are inherently more authoritative, that they should necessarily be paid more because, you know, they're the breadwinner and, you know, of course a man has to be given work over a woman.
But also a working class man versus a working class woman, she's going to be more subjugated than he is in every single way. I'm not saying that we don't need to pay attention. I mean, all I do is talk about liberating women and women's rights. I'm saying that we can't do this without men, and nor should we. And they're not doing us a fucking favor. That they would liberate themselves from the fact that they are slaves, essentially, to much wealthier powers up top. And when a war comes, they will be the ones sent off to it. When a dangerous job is needed, they will be the ones sent to do it. When a disgusting job is needed, they will be the ones sent to do it for a minimal fee compared to however much the fat cat in the top office is earning. They need to wake up and realize that we are all being fucked by the same system, and you would liberate yourselves by liberating us. And I think that men are ultimately more submissive than women naturally. And I think you see this even in dogs and pets. Girl cats and girl dogs are fucking impossible to train, whereas boys are more likely to fall in line. And you look at the army, and you look at ICE, and you look at the people who volunteer to do these really like mad, dangerous jobs. It's men. Men are more likely to follow orders. Like all the manosphere is complaining about constantly is how we cannot train these hoes. They cannot get these hoes to fall in line. And it's remarkable to me. And I think that it's evident in the fact that patriarchy can only be upheld violently. It shows it's not natural. And I think men like to follow orders from other men, and women don't. If we were going to be able to be subjugated, if we were naturally submissive, it would have happened by now. We would have submitted. But even in Afghanistan, the women who are not allowed to sing, to speak, to look out of both eyes are still taking to the streets and protesting. The women in Iran, they're fighting back. The women in America, they're fighting back. We are difficult to control because we don't actually fall in line. We're not naturally submissive. Without violence, we cannot be forced to submit. And so I think we need to reevaluate this, and men need to understand they are naturally much more inherently submissive. And I think that perhaps the patriarchy fears that if men were to spend too much time with women and to listen to women and to follow the lead of women, they might find their own inner rebellion. And all of the men I know who are the most rebellious, or look at, David Bowie or Prince or all these different men who are such great leaders, Mamdani, all of these people, there is a strong feminine energy in them. They're manly fucking men, but they have a strong feminine quality to them in their empathy and their softness and their generosity. And that's what makes them great leaders, and that's what makes them rebels. It's the feminine in them. All the most masculine men I know just want to fall in line and be told what to do by another man.
So do you feel like you have enough examples in your environment? And I know obviously James comes up a lot when we talk about healthy models of masculinity. And I think it was a while ago, I was listening to you on a show where you were talking about James writing a song, I think, was it with Travis?
Oh, yeah.
about girlfriends.
That's humbling.
And it being the most humbling experience of your life. And I wanted to dig into that with you on the subject of patriarchy, because if I remember rightly, what was humbling... Well, actually, you tell me what was humbling about the track.
Well, it was a joke. I was joking about the fact that... when it comes to my sex appeal, it's evident even in a song where James is singing with Travis Scott about, their girlfriends, and Travis is singing about Kylie like, ass fatter than a beach, and something about a big peach. And then James's lyrics are like, she's a lovely person and she's a really good listener. And I was like, got it.
Would you have preferred he rapped about your peach?
No, I don't have one. There's actually nothing there to remark upon. No, it's more so just an idea of the way that I present myself sexually. But no, I'm very comfortable with the way that he looks at me and sings about me. And if that was any kind of problem for him, we wouldn't still be together all these years. We're 11 years in. I don't feel the need to perform femininity for anyone. I'm just figuring out life my own way. I think I'm quite masculine and quite feminine. I don't even really know what those things mean. I was asked the other day on a podcast to tell me to tell someone 2 great qualities I admire in men. And I love men and I care deeply for men. And I seek their salvation and their liberation as much as I do women's, because we have to share this fucking planet together. And also if we don't fix the men, then the men are going to continue to ruin our lives. But I was asked to identify these 2 traits in men that I admire, and I couldn't think of any 2 traits that I consider to be specific to men. I was like, every good trait in men I know, I see in all of the women that I know. So I don't see any traits in men specifically that I couldn't, any positive traits that I couldn't find in a woman.
So if I were to name a masculine trait, which, to put it to you, is considered to be unpopular these days in feminist circles, I believe in chivalry. And people look at me like I'm on crack when I say this.
Well, chivalry is anthropological. And I think that's the thing that we don't understand. And I do think feminism in the 90s made a big stink about chivalry because I think the conversation got very confused. I think really what women were trying to say was, I don't want to have to owe you sex or subservience in exchange for you to hold the fucking door open for me and for you to pay for dinner. I don't want to have to fuck you because you paid for dinner. I think that's what women were trying to say.
But you still need to pay for dinner.
When we were fighting chivalry, I think what we were fighting was the fact that chivalry needs to be in exchange for a ludicrous amount on our part. Yeah. Like a very minimal act on their part is a ludicrous amount on our part. And so I think that's what it was that was making feminists reject it, was that I don't want this transactional form of you just doing the basics, which is an anthropological basic. Unfortunately for everyone, we are designed anthropologically to seek a partner, if we are straight, who is going to protect us, who's going to protect our children, the nest. And, if we don't see marks of that, then we get the vaginal ick. And we can't, and feminists can't override that. They might want to.
Absolutely.
And men can't overcome that. Chivalry is just it's a fancy, posh, white way of really exploring what is a deep, universal, historical, anthropological need for men to be seen as safe. Otherwise, why would women bother? Women can do fucking almost everything ourselves. We don't really need them for anything other than protecting us from other men. So if you want to be able to have the love and the care of a woman who's going to, what are all those fucking marriage statistics about the fact that men who are married live longer than unmarried men, but women who are married live less long than unmarried women. Men benefit from marriage. They benefit from having a woman in the home and the tenderness and the love and the care and the organising and the community that a woman builds. Because fuck knows, men don't traditionally do that. Why would you not think you have to do something to evoke that urge in a woman to come and fucking look after you? Because that is what's going to happen. And yeah, just to add quickly, and this is topical, but the submissiveness of men really stood out to me in the P. Diddy documentaries. I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah, I watched them,
the ones on Netflix. How many men were talking about everything they witnessed over all of those years and did and said nothing because they were afraid of a more powerful man. And it was women ultimately who took that whole situation apart. It was women who stood up and then stood together and then looked after each other and stood in solidarity. There was one woman, I think, who didn't. But predominantly, I was amazed to see how many men, big, strong, grown men, did nothing, said nothing, and didn't even distance themselves from him. Didn't go, okay, that's not for me. I don't abide by that. I'm scared of him, so I don't want to take that on. I'm going to distance myself. They stayed all of those years whilst knowing exactly what's happening.
But they weren't just scared, though, were they? They were also
participating, and they were participating, and they were benefiting. Some of them weren't benefiting. Some of them thought they were benefiting, and they found out they were actually being sexually assaulted in their sleep.
Sure. And then it became wrong when they were being sexually assaulted. And it really isn't an attack
for me to say that they're more submissive. And I think they take it as an attack because men aren't raised to be men. They're just raised not to be women, right? So I think they see it as some form of like me trying to emasculate men, whereas I'm not. I'm saying that all of the historical data would show that men are easier to fall in line and to take an order than women. These bitches cannot be controlled. So why don't we try stopping controlling these women and subjugating these women and figure out who is trying to control everyone up top? I want men to join us in the fight, not for us, for them. Obviously, we will benefit from that. But that's why I'm focusing on this. It's not to take away from all of the horrors of the existence of being a woman, but it's to make men wake the fuck up and realize that we're in this shit together and you're killing yourselves at much higher numbers than we are, and you're all about to be sent off to your death in the next world war, not us. So fucking wake up.
So interestingly, I often play a game when I do kind of public speaking things in small circles, where I ask men to list 3 women that they admire and respect and look to for inspiration. And you'll never guess what, frankly, most people struggle to list 3. guess who always comes up as number one?
Mum.
Of course. So there is a wider, clearly, issue of men being unable to look at women as equals intellectually, politically, socially, that's reflected in our wider culture. We could go into like the many ways in which that's happened historically, but that's now being cemented through this rise of the conservative bros, right? Also the conservative sisters, right? I mean, there's a lot of people today who are huge fans of Candace Owens. I like to remind people who are fans of Candace that Candace also just believes that you and I should be at home tending to our husbands. I mean, on issues of gender, I don't know how much she differs from Erica Kirk.
I don't understand how she can feel that way, though, if she's a successful broadcaster.
No, but not her, just you. You, not her. Did you not watch Handmaid's Tale?
No, I didn't watch it.
You've not watched The Handmaid's Tale?
I couldn't actually take it. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't.
Well, you definitely can't have it now
do it.
because it is literally what is
Oh, so I know it's being
happening.
used as a manifesto. It's
For real.
a guide, yeah.
I mean, even Melania Trump's style at the inauguration, many people speculated was based on the style of the wives of the elite people in that series. So anyways, I guess what I was going to ask you about was, it feels obviously that like there's a massive backlash happening against feminism today. I don't think feminism has ever felt as contested to me in my generation as it does now. I'll regularly meet young men and young women who will say to me, I'm not a feminist. I don't see the need for the movement. Like, everything's pretty equal. And frankly, feminism has done more harm than good. I'm sure you've come across this argument before.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the conservative discourse that you think is a corrective recalibration?
Nothing's coming to mind. Do you have anything?
I suppose the one thing I think about is the focus on family and the home. And I think for a long time we were pushed to think, certainly my mum's generation onwards, to think of success and emancipation as to be found primarily outside the home, right? And probably in economic terms, you were successful because you had a great job, you earned a good living, material manifestations of success. And I do think that the one thing I probably would take, which I personally also do quite lean into, is the recalibration of our value as humans as occurring first and foremost within our interpersonal relationships. The family, your relationship to your partner, your relationship to your children, your relationship to your...
For women?
No, for everyone.
Right, yeah. Because I think my problem is that I agree that we should all have those values. But as long as we're in a world where men are given the social and societal and economical and political freedom to go out and do those things, we end up in an uneven playing field where then if a woman is financially disadvantaged, we know she is more likely to end up in an abusive relationship that could end in her death, right? So unfortunately, whilst we still live in a hyper-capitalist, I'm like I said, I'm anti the girl boss or the girl man thing. You know, I've gone on many, high-performance podcasts shitting on everyone for hyper-capitalism. I don't believe there's any such thing as a good billionaire. Like, I think we can all pretty much agree on that now. Anyone who's simping for a billionaire at this point really needs to just go and fucking read a book. Problem is that the disparity creates inequity that can only lead to near slavery for women. And I've watched my own lineage of women be forced to suffer domestic violence for decades, disabling them or nearly ending their lives because they didn't have the financial freedom to get away, which is why I think it's so despicable when especially women encourage other women not to take that financial freedom. It is obscene to not have your own bank account. It is obscene to only use, and you see these horror stories on TikTok of women who are married, who have a shared card, whose husband has suddenly decided to leave them. It's not just if you decide to leave. Her husband's met someone else, he wants to leave her, and now he's cut off her card. That's the only card she has access to. She hasn't worked in 11 years because she's been rearing his children, and now she has absolutely no idea what to do. And he doesn't, I think, what is it? Something like 10% of men will ever actually pay the alimony they're supposed to pay. It's imperative that we have some form of stability that is something that I will never back off of. And so I think the world needs to change. Men and women need to change. I also feel sad that men feel this need, programmed by patriarchy, because this did not come from women, that you're supposed to go out there and work and work and work and suffer and suffer and suffer and never have time for your friends or your loved ones or your life. You're just going to go and break your fucking back and then die with this kind of promise of the afterlife where then you'll be repaid for all your hard work. We don't know if that exists. So you might just be doing all of this for no fucking reason. There may be no 70 virgins. There may be no perfect afterlife full of blowjobs and ice creams. Like, you have no idea what's after this. And so wouldn't it be cool if women could also work and have freedom and be intellectually stimulated, and then you have someone intellectually stimulating at home, and then she's doing some of the legwork so that you don't have to do all the legwork, and then you could actually live a life. You could maintain some friendships. You could make your life about more than just work and then doing whatever you can with your family. You could indulge in pleasure. Men only seek to benefit from actual feminism, but maybe we just don't need to call it feminism then, because this is the thing, is that it's just equal rights. What I'm calling for throughout this episode is that men need to understand that they are the number one target of patriarchy. They were just told it was us, and they fucking believed it because they're so gullible.
And do you see any men that you kind of admire and respect speaking out in the space that you think offer, you know, a way forward for men to understand the reality of what it looks like to live a life that is not in complete submission to the patriarchal vision of masculinity? Because I see a lot of the bros on the other side. I mean, I listed a few in our intro, but like in general, you know, I'm raising a boy. Like, I think a lot about what he's taking on in terms of the people who pop up on his YouTube, for example. And I have to be honest with you, I'm not seeing a hell of a lot of guys, you know, hearing what you're saying and deciding to be part of the change. There are some, of course there are some.
Yeah.
But by and large, I see a lot of like pro-billionaire, pro-machismo.
But it's just men craving the respect and admiration of other men. I'm so confused by those spaces. I'm like, if you actually want girls, go where the girls go and see whose comment sections we're all exploding under. Because it's none of the bros that you're following. Go look under Pedro Pascal's page. Go look under Mark Ruffalo's page. Go look under Jordan Stevens' page. Like, go and look at who everyone's going over and learn something. Because the only people under the guys that you follow who are commenting are other guys. There's no girls there. And many of the girls I go and look into, I'm like, who is this woman? It's a bot. So you're not going to meet anyone there. You're just going to keep being lonelier.
Well, it could be your future wife at this rate.
So much of this comes from the fact that men just don't make friends with each other. So they're so fucking reliant upon women, and women just aren't reliant upon men. And they think that's just because we hate them. And it's like, no, it's because we're sated. Like, our female friendships are so fulfilling, are so rewarding. I get everything I need from other women. And so I don't need my boyfriend. I want my boyfriend. And he, thankfully, is also not obsessed where he can't be self-reliant. He's got his own male friendships. I have encouraged him to foster that in his life. And so he doesn't need me either. He wants me. And that's why we're so happy after 11 years. This need issue where men need women and then they go out of their way to subjugate women, to force women to need them, is what's leading to this clusterfuck where it's unromantic, it's unsexy, no one's happy, everyone's lonely, we're all going to die.
To move us on slightly, because I want to talk to you a little bit about the current pressures on women aesthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Here at The Tea, we're always digging into the headlines. And honestly, when you look at what's going on with refugee and asylum policy in the UK, it's hard not to feel appalled and frankly powerless. But we want to shift the focus from policy to people. That's why we're partnering with Love Welcomes, a social enterprise built on dignity and respect. They create fairly paid, meaningful work for women who've been displaced and are rebuilding their lives. Love Welcomes employs them to turn reclaimed materials, sometimes even old life vests or emergency blankets, into beautiful, high-quality pieces for your home. And with gift-giving season already here, instead of buying more stuff, why not choose something with real meaning behind it? Hit the link in the description to check out Love Welcomes, support real women, support fair pay, and pick up something beautiful for your home that actually stands for something.
It's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare, and I concur with that. And I have to say that after I saw Kris Jenner's new face, my entire view on plastic surgery changed. I'm now saving up. Please donate to my person. No, I'm joking.
I'm pro-choice.
So I'm not, and this is the irony of us on this having this conversation. I'm not. I find that a lot of the time, what we describe as pro-choice when it comes to plastic surgery is really just us making accommodations with the patriarchy, which full sympathy for, we're all doing it. But let's not pretend it's not. That's my bit. Let's not pretend it's not. Let's not claim that it's actually just about me.
No, I mean, that was debunked
me.
in 2020, though. We all, we had all had beards and long pubes down to our feet and long breaking nails. We both looked like shit and also looked the best we've ever looked, and started to fall back in love with our faces, and started to wear less makeup and stopped having Botox and filler because you couldn't, and people started to recognize their faces moving again. We had this brief moment of going, oh yeah, I actually wasn't doing it for myself, because in my natural habitat, I am but a sloth. And so I agree 100%. And I've always said that, you know, I've always challenged the fact that, is it choice? And is it empowerment, or is it indoctrination? How can we ever know when we've never had a kind of sip of oxygen outside of this echo chamber of chaos? But all I mean is that whatever someone wants to do to their face or body, be it a tattoo or a facelift or a unicorn horn, whatever, you should do whatever you want. This is one life. What I object to is us gaslighting each other that what we're seeing in women's aesthetics is in any way empowering. And the stupidest thing I've seen said all year is that facelifts are pro-aging. That made me want to, I was in a mainstream women's magazine, that made me want to blow my brains out. Like that is a new frontier of gaslighting. And misinformation.
That's insane. But so here's my slight pushback on this one. So
do you actually want a facelift?
Not at this moment in time. I hope that there's at least 10 more years in there before we have to get to that. But I think what I was tongue-in-cheek saying was that until this point, that seemed like such an absurd idea to me. The idea, because this is a really invasive
it's now so
surgery,
accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, and then
for a mere $140,000.
Just $140,000. I'm just ticking away at that little.
Don't buy a house.
Yeah,
don't secure yourself. Don't buy land.
Why would you do that?
No,
you could just get a new face.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm getting at is the way in which it also works in my subconscious, right? Which is suddenly I was just like, okay, these surgeries that for a long time I was very able to reject because frankly I thought you looked like Frankenstein coming out of it. Suddenly I was like, oh, this is what I don't know how old she is, 60-something could look like. And given that we are all, I mean, particularly those of us who work in the media under particular lenses of scrutiny, but we're all in the media these days because you are the star of your TikTok and Instagram page as things already stand. It's difficult to claim that I think publicizing what you've had done makes it less nefarious, because today I think it's just an ad for your plastic surgeon.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Because obviously we now have...
I just think we have a beauty standard that's been set by paedophiles ultimately, and the people at the top of this industry and the media are largely paedophiles, as we're now learning via the Epstein case. And I think that they want to have sex with little girls and they want to normalise their desire to have sex with little girls. So they've tried to make everyone try to look like a little girl or a young woman so that it won't look weird how they in their 50s and 60s want to fuck someone who's barely out of their teens or still in their teens. So I just, on a sort of spite level, reject the idea that we are going to mutilate or harm or risk ourselves in any way or create any discomfort or risk whatsoever as women for a bunch of paedophiles. which is ultimately what the beauty standard is. And that's what it was perpetuated by. That's who peddles all the advertising and propaganda and AI that makes us want to look that way. I also think part of it is grooming us for AI, because if everyone's faces don't move, it will be easier to simulate an actress or a media personality or a fake person, and no one will be able to tell the difference. I think Botox has been very effective with that. I think if we all homogenize to the same face, it'll be harder to tell if AI is fake or real, because everyone kind of looks the same. Everyone kind of looks like AI in real life. They just look like like AI in real life. And so I think it's all just like a dangerous, sad, slippery slope that's been upheld by women who have believed that to center men is the most important thing in life. Because I don't see so many lesbians signing up to put their house savings away for a facelift instead. This is very much so about the male gaze. And I personally am just very okay with being left alone if somebody can't handle time and gravity showing on my face. If my boyfriend were to one day decide, oh no, I'm old, but you've also become old, and he left, then that's fine. My life is wonderful. I just can't imagine mutilating myself for a man.
No. Well, and the way it works is you never would think it was for the man, because I think by the time you get to that procedure, you've convinced yourself that it's for you and for your empowerment.
It's not just for men, it's for the approval of other women who are also male-centered.
Right, absolutely. Which is still most of us, and I would,
totally. And I don't, like I said, I had an eating disorder for 20 years. I have mutilated myself in many ways, or like damaged myself at least in many ways, over this patriarchal lens and the beauty standard. So I'm certainly not one to ever judge, but I am going to continue to call out what it is, which is simping for the patriarchy and paying good money to do it. As much as it might be more accessible to have a facelift now, or you don't look like a lion woman when you do it, that's still your fucking savings. In a world in which you are paid less on the pound or dollar for the same work, we already have a pink tax. We already have to spend more money getting home safe. And then we still might get raped in the cab on the way home. So there's enough risk and pain just in my body existing as a woman every day. The idea of spending more money to hurt myself or risk, we were told Botox is safe. And then they were like, actually, Botox might be crossing the blood-brain barrier and it might be contributing to neurological disorders. Filler is safe and it dissolves within 6 months. And now it turns out filler doesn't dissolve. And we found MRIs of women 10 years later and the filler didn't dissolve. And now the next thing, threading was, supposed to be the next thing. And then that caused neurological issues. Some people developed trigeminal neuralgia. We're going to see issues with the facelifts. The people who can't afford the really good doctors are going to get the fucking backstreet ones. The BBL killed so many women. I just can't believe the lengths that we will go to be deemed attractive. And I recognize that I exist within privilege because I am seen now in my life as an attractive woman. 20 years ago, I was not the beauty standard. I am now. I will not be again soon. It just goes in and out all the time. But I'm less attractive now than I was 15 years ago by today's standards. That's fine by me. I will continue to be less attractive by these standards. I like myself, and women are not told to have any importance as to what they actually think of themselves.
And can we just come back on that a quick second here? Because do you actually think you're less attractive than you were 15 years ago?
No.
No. I don't think you're less attractive.
No,
genuinely.
I like my face, but gravity is slowly but surely happening, and I'm not as skinny as I was, and my hair is not as thick and glossy. I really like myself. And I appreciate this face that's getting older, and I appreciate the stories of the scars and the stretch marks and the cellulite and the signs of wonderful burgers that I have been lucky to eat in the last 10 years. I am so uninterested in any more pain, risk or discomfort, never mind paying for it, for these insecure and frankly quite ugly men. The people who set these beauty standards, the male and the female editors of the magazines, do not meet the beauty standards. Why on earth are we listening to them?
And what do you answer to those young men online who say, it's not a beauty standard, Jameela, it's natural, it's actually biological, it's because women are more fertile from their teens.
But we're now learning that women aren't actually only fertile in their youth. We're now learning that it's sperm that loses its potency, and women can actually, that follicular health, there's now so much that's being disputed around that. It's not true. It's propaganda. I know plenty of men who are attracted to older women or women their own age who look at a teenage girl and they see a teenage girl.
You'd hope.
Yeah, no, but I know those men. I literally know those men. They're not interested in spending time with her. And the men who want to spend time with very young women and they're like, she has an old soul, they don't have 18-year-old male friends. They don't hang out. They don't fraternize with 19-year-old boys. It's all nonsense. I think it's something that needs to be more clearly identified. There was a time where Sophia Loren in her 30s was the beauty standard, Marilyn Monroe, Monica Bellucci, like all of these different women. There was a time where pre-Raphaelite women, like there was a time where if you look through, this is what I was saying to someone the other day, is that when I look back through the history of art and music and literature, the women who the greatest songs and the greatest stories and the most beautiful paintings were inspired by did not look like this weird, creepy beauty standard. So I'm going to chill. I'm not going to meet that. And you know what? There have been very few truly beautiful, inspiring songs about women made recently. And I'm not saying that's because it's not inspiring. I'm just saying that I don't think there's a correlation here. I think those women were perfectly gorgeous then. I think women look great now. But I'm not going to fall into a beauty standard because men will eat what they've given at the end of the day. And if we continue to just jump through all these hoops that they are not having to jump through, we're just going to continue to fuck ourselves and fuck other women.
I've got a completely conflicted view on this issue, which is that I am as vain as any other person. And I am aware that in the public arena, we have a limited shelf life. That women in journalism, for example, disappear off screen. I mean, I could list on one hand the remaining female journalists that I know that are over 50. And they're badass and they're great at what they do, but it's similar in acting, right? There's like one Helen Mirren, there's like a couple, but really past a certain age, you drop off screens. And so the accommodation you make with that is either twofold, right? You either, dance to dance and see what happens, a la maybe Nicole Kidman. Again, no shade, it's a choice that's been made and it's working. Nicole is still on screen. Or you maybe opt out, which is another option. But I can't stand on my high horse about either personally because I have no idea how I'm going to react on it. So why is it, do you think, that
in America they've got quite a lot of broadcasters who are over the age of 50?
Women?
Yes.
Who would you consider to be?
Gayle King, Barbara Walters.
And they're still presenting, you'd say?
Kat Deely was presenting up until recently. She's still presenting here. She's in her 50s. In fact, when I went to America, I was struck by how many women are over the age of 40 or 50. And look at The View, look at Joy, look at Whoopi. These women, some of them are in their fucking 80s. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Aren't some of those shows just women-aimed shows, though? Because I would say that shows that are aimed
Good Morning America isn't.
Good Morning America. Well, I'd say morning shows or daily shows, the shows that happen kind of between the 9 to 5.
Or more for housewives.
More for housewives.
Right.
So then I would say that's kind of probably what you're marketing. But when I look at primetime TV or I look at kind of the lead actresses in big Hollywood films, I think you still find that there's a fairly narrow array of leading ladies. The fact that
But
Scarlett
it wasn't like that
Johansson
for a while.
is still viewed as like, is she still within the bracket of being able to lead as a kind of sex bomb? It's like Scarlett Johansson. Are we
also,
really
but also,
having
there's so many more interesting roles than a sex bomb.
Of course, but that's still the main...
Yeah, no, of course. But I don't know, like when I grew up, I was watching films about women after the age of 40 finding love, and I feel like those films have disappeared
Was
largely.
that Bridget Jones?
So it's not, no, she was in her 30s, but but I would say like Diane Keaton, Something's Gotta Give, or Meryl Streep with Alec Baldwin, I can't remember what that one's called, It's Complicated or something, Under the Tuscan Sun, Eat, Pray, Love, like all these films made me feel like life would begin at 40 and the women looked like they were in their 40s and their faces moved, and Diane Keaton had grey hair and a normal body, and you had Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet flying the flag. And so I feel as though that we were actually getting to a decent place, and then partially our complicity added to the belief that then it was possible to make women fall in line, because we did fall in line, right?
I think that's the controversial conversation.
I think the Ozempic conversation, I think has highlighted that we were on a good path and women were starting to be allowed to look like women on television, and it was celebrated. And Emma Thompson having sex with that gorgeous young Irish actor and showing her naked body and looking at herself in the mirror, and what a glorious, gorgeous moment that was. Like, were we getting to a better place? And then we just, because of our own submissiveness and our own conditioning for compliance and obedience, meant that we went and jumped in, and we've made the beauty standards so extreme. Like, there's no gun was held to our heads for us to become super skinny. Women did that to themselves. They had all of the information. I'm not saying that they're not indoctrinated by society and pressured by society, but we were in a better place. I'm in the belly of the fucking beast in Hollywood. We were in a better place. There was a choice made by women who do know better, who are off more than not old enough to know better, who knew the risks, knew the implications, knew the social implications, the patriarchal implications, the bone density implications, and did it anyway. And do you think that we have been complicit in erasing the older woman?
We have absolutely been complicit. I think the challenge is like, how do we fight that fight internally when we continue to be rewarded for the crumbs that we do receive within the current system for, fighting each other for the little bits that we're being handed. And I think that's where the challenge is, right? The reason those women...
I think it's that if nobody did it, if we made a collective decision to
But there'd always be one.
Fine, there can be one. But this is the masses. My industry is like, everyone is skin and bone and tweaked and pulled and unrecognizable. Like, I went to Fashion Week recently, and I said that it might be my last one, because I bumped into 3 separate people who came over to say hello to me, people I know really well, and I literally didn't recognize them. And so they had to reintroduce themselves to me, these people I've known for 10 years. So we are mutilating ourselves. It is nothing short. We call it self-care or, pampering, all these different things. We're mutilating ourselves to contribute to erasing ourselves. We're just erasing ourselves. We are erasing our stories, our history, our emotions, our own empathy, and we're spending money to do it. We're leaving ourselves more financially vulnerable in order to do so. And I think that it doesn't make me judge anyone. It just makes me despair. And I wonder if anyone's considered, what's the long game here?
Well, what is part of the pushback? Because obviously body positivity, which has now fallen out of fashion again.
How ridiculous, isn't it, that our bodies could be trends?
Well, I very much feel that this is one of the evolutions I've experienced in my lifetime, is that our bodies are literally now trends, right? So we were following trends, but now your actual body can be a trend. Like, if this month it's the BBL, you can go get a BBL. But like, if next year it's not, you can go and get another surgery and get it removed and have whatever the next thing is. We are literally the product. And I suppose the question is, what does a pushback against that? Because I know that I obviously see these videos, I'm sure you do too, of people being like, posing, real me. I'll be frank, I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's going to save us. Seeing, somebody show me their bloated morning belly, I'm just like, okay, cool, somebody else has that shit too. But I don't know that it's helping kind of construct another, because I also think this is all ultimately tied to capitalism. I know there are
it's also tied to authoritarianism. Whenever we slide towards authoritarianism, the aesthetic prescription for women becomes far more intense.
Right. And we have to become weaker and slighter and more docile and, so the heroin chic is bang on time for the season, as it were. But I suppose what I'm wondering is, when you were talking about Ozempic, for example, we won't name names, but there are people who were promoting Ozempic who literally had stakes in the company, right? So when they're promoting it, as in taking it themselves and being like, oh, I struggled my whole life with my weight and like, it's not for everyone, but like, it's helped me so much. And it's like, yeah, because you have shares in the company. Like, can we be honest? Like, half of these people aren't just promoting it because they want to feel good about themselves. Now they've been struggling with their weight their whole life. Like, there's economic gains that you're making as a consequence of promoting something which you happen to know is harmful. It's not just a trend.
It's harmful for some, it's helpful for some.
Just harmful for some.
Clear, yeah.
Yeah. there are potential harmful risks for those who take them.
I'm just not up for risk. I'm so done with risk. It's risky for me to leave the house every day in a world where there are men. I'm just not up for inflicting it upon myself.
Let me just ask you 2 more questions.
You were asking me about what's inspiring.
Yeah.
Just quickly.
So what's inspiring
an important one. What's inspiring to me is ease. I don't get to see ease very often. And when I see Kate Winslet and when I see Emma Thompson, I see ease and I see happiness and I see comfort. And to make that cool again would be so wonderful. And we go through these moments where, the 80s, everyone was super skinny and everyone was in their aerobics gear and Coke was everywhere. And then suddenly the 90s came around and girls were like, you know what, I'm actually just like I'm not up for this. I'm not up for being this preened, and I'm not going to wear so much makeup on TV anymore, and I'm not going to be super skinny, and I'm going to wear, I think grunge came in, and I'm going to wear comfortable men's shoes. I'm going to wear Doc Martens and baggy trousers, and I'm not going to shave my armpits anymore, and I'm going to be intelligent on camera. And suddenly you have the birth of Lauryn Hill, and you have the birth of Fiona Apple and Alanis Morissette, and what those girls were, even though they had their own issues or their own eating disorders like Fiona Apple, they were operating in self-confidence and ease. And that to me is what I hope to emanate to women. And I hope that women who are making the same choices I am is to emanate like, I am comfortable with the journey and I'm happy and I'm not anxious all the time. And when I was worrying about my looks all the time, I was constantly anxious. It's a compulsive state of mind. It is a prison.
It is.
And it's addictive. And once you start tweaking, it's so hard to stop because you start to, you develop like a pattern recognition for like, oh no, this has changed. And if I have Botox here, it's going to make this atrophy. So then I need to fix that. And it just, you Humpty Dumpty. You turn into Humpty Dumpty, just putting like all the pieces back together again. And it's exhausting and it takes away time from your life, from your happiness, from your orgasms, from your meaning, from your adventures. Because you're chasing this arbitrary thing that I swear to God you won't give a shit about on your deathbed. And I think all the time about my 85-year-old self, all the time. It's all I think about. It consumes me. Is what would she think about this decision now to go on this podcast or to go here or to not take this job and actually just stay in and have sex? Like, what is my 85-year-old self going to think about this? Do I choose the adventure or do I choose the accolade? I'm going to fucking choose the adventure. She's not going to give a shit how flat my stomach was. She's not going to give a shit how young I looked. She's just going to care whether or not I filled her with memories. And so we need to bring back some reverence for older women. And we need to understand that the reason we fear older women is because patriarchy fears older women, because older women know what they want, they know what they're good at, they know their worth, they know themselves. And all of this is an attack ultimately on older women. We encourage young women to take all these risks that could have long-term effects, but the patriarchy doesn't give a shit because the patriarchy thinks that, well, it doesn't matter what happens to her later. It doesn't matter if she develops osteoporosis. It doesn't matter if she develops bowel cancer or any of these other things or kidney problems. She won't be of any use to us, so she can just fuck off. Whereas actually this is when women become their most important, their most vital, their most valuable. I have never felt more alive, more sane, more sure of myself. I've never been happier. I've never been emotionally more stable. I've never had better friendships, better experiences, better adventures, better sex, all of these things until now. And that's what makes me terrifying. Because if I know myself, I might know you. If women know themselves, they might start to actually look at men. And that's why we have to be erased. And so if we contribute to the erasure of older women, all we do is ensure that men never grow and they never change and they never step up.
I personally can corroborate firsthand that it's absolutely terrifying to a man for you to see them for what they actually are. I think we spend a lot of time as women being accounted by men, whether it's in our physicality or in our day-to-day, right? Because of hierarchies that are inbuilt in our culture. And I think the minute that you communicate or begin to communicate with a man on a level of actual equality, because in your head there's no distinction, that actually for a lot of men lets off a kind of...
But it's textbook. What's happening is textbook. It's a classic narcissist handbook to say, don't look at me. Why don't you worry about yourself? I'm going to pick apart every single part of you so that you're now in a spin thinking about yourself so you won't have time to look at me. We have got to look at them and teach them that it's okay to look at themselves. And we were able to. We hold each other accountable all the time. We argue with each other all the time. It's okay to know that something's wrong and you need to shift something a little bit. It's okay to go and talk to a therapist in an office. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have your emotions. It makes for the strongest, best, sexiest men. The women love the men who know themselves and who know how to make us laugh and know how to make us come. It's really not that hard. I don't understand why everyone's making it so fucking complicated.
Jameela, last question to you. I'm aware that you are back off to LA quite soon, back for more acting roles, I think it is.
My film got nominated for some awards, so I'm going to go.
Congratulations.
Say well done to the team.
I know you were also involved in the recent Hollywood strikes, recent-ish Hollywood strikes. A lot of that
feels like so long ago now.
Feels a long time ago.
What a waste of time.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because obviously part of that was to negotiate what happens as AI integrates the industry. And many people obviously are predicting that there'll be no need for human actors in the coming years, that they obviously will own your image, the right of your image, the right to your voice. They can now merge clones of different actors. So there'll be like a merger between, like, I don't know, two people that we already think are amazing, and it'll create this uber amazing AI actor, and we won't need to hire actors anymore. Do you think there'll still be a role for human actors in the future?
Yeah, I do. I just think it'll happen later. I think sometimes humanity needs to really ruin something to realise how good they had it before. And I think great indie filmmaking will find its way back out. And I think we'll have like a 90s golden era of cinema. There will be less roles. There will be less crew who are hired. It's going to destroy so many people's lives, and they've attached so much of their identities to this art, and it's really, really sad. But I think eventually human beings will miss human beings. It's just inevitable, and so I just think it's going to be a long, bumpy road ahead. But again, we have all the power. We don't have to tolerate this. We could just defund it. We can reject it. We can refuse to work within, to watch these things and support the networks that do this. You saw what happened in 4 days with Jimmy Kimmel getting his job back when everyone cancelled their subscriptions. All you have to do is vote with your pound, vote with your dollar. You can actually stop this still. The question is, do you have the inner strength? I'm buying a DVD player at the moment. I'm buying some old DVDs. I'm going to watch old stuff that's real and good and full of heart and with quality writing rather than this shit we're being fed now because of second screen viewing. So I'm not for it. I don't want to participate. I'm going to hang on to what is nourishing and good. And if everyone else wants to go and eat this processed shit, they can. But it's only going to destroy your own lives. So much meaning and understanding is brought around by art. As frivolous as it is, Will and Grace had such an incredible impact on the way that we saw gay people. So many great films, like The Colour Purple, etc. Were able to tell us incredible stories of African Americans. There's so much. Bridesmaids showed us how hilarious women are. Art has a profound way, especially comedy, but all art, of transcending beyond what it is into culture. And we're just going to be fed a bunch of shit, and it's only going to make us more shit. And so you have all the power to stop that now. We all have the choice. We keep making the wrong choice, but we do have a tiny window left to make the correct one. And I hope in the new year, people will move forward intentionally for what kind of world do you want to end up in? Because every decision you make right now is leading to that.
Any New Year resolutions on your end?
I'd like to become even more disobedient. I'd like to piss even more people off and get weirder. I'd like to become an unruly old bitch is the plan. I'm trying to launch my crone years early. I turned 40 in February.
Congratulations.
I'm very, very excited. Thank you. It's amazing to have survived this long in a world full of men. But I'm very excited to just continue to be a chaos goblin, really.
All hail the chaos goblins, from one chaos goblin to another.
Exactly.
Jameela Jamil, thank you so much for taking
you.
the time to talk with me today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. At The Tea, we are passionate about bringing you unique and meaningful discussions that aren't always in the spotlight. If you believe in what we're doing, we'd love your support. Hit that subscribe button and join us on Patreon. Patreon members get ad-free episodes, exclusive content, and a front seat role in where we go next with our combos. Independent journalism isn't free. Your support keeps these independent conversations alive. So, until next time, stay awake, support independent content, and we'll see you soon for more tea. Thanks for tuning into The Tea. If this episode resonated with you, drop a comment and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And why not dive into these other episodes we think you'll love? Let's keep the conversation going.